hello, and welcome to Nursing News You Can Use live at 5. I'm Tina Baxter, your host, and I want to say welcome to all of you that are joining us on our Facebook pages on Baxter Professional Services and the Nurse Track Academy Facebook, and those that are watching us on YouTube. I want to welcome you to this Wednesday, March the 13th, 2024, and we're going to talk about what's happening in healthcare and healthcare news. But let's start off with our affirmation. Our affirmation for today: I look forward to healthy days and years ahead because I take loving care of my body now. I look forward to healthy days and years ahead because I take loving care of my body now. And those are from the Louise Hay affirmation calendar. I can do it. So let's go ahead and get started. So first off, I just wanted to say, I usually wait for the end for announcements, but I want to announce this in the beginning and announce this at the end as well, because I want to say a thank you and I want to make sure that it gets out. I want to thank everyone that has voted for me for the Alignable Local Business Person of the Year for Anderson, Indiana. And I wanted to thank you for voting me as a Local Business Person of the Year for the third year in a row. I appreciate that. So we'll be having a big press release and announcement next week about this. But I wanted to personally thank everyone for supporting us throughout the years with Baxter Professional Services. And I'm going to ask you again, if you'll do me one more good, solid favor, please don't forget to like and subscribe for this information and to promote the show and share it with others, because I want everyone to be able to know what's happening in healthcare, particularly doctors, nurses, techs, those people that are on the front lines. This is important and great information to get out. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our first story of the day. Here's our first story, and this is a follow-up from what we've been reporting the last couple weeks about the closing of the nursing home in St. Louis. This is from Skilled Nursing News, and it says, abruptly closed St. Louis nursing home issued more fines for safety and admin violations. So let's get on with the story. The largest nursing home in St. Louis, which was shuttered abruptly in December, is now facing more fines linked to safety and administration requirement violations when moving residents out. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or CMS, is fining Northview Village directors Maklof and Lorraine Sousa. I hope I'm pronouncing their name correctly, Sousa, and Eric Rothner more than $18,000 per day, totaling more than $56,000 for such violations over 3 days, according to a report from the St. Louis Public Radio. All three directors are based in Illinois. The Souses owned several other properties in the region in downstate Illinois, while members of the Rothner family owned or operated other SNFs in the state, according to the report. The Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services found at Northview failed to take measures to ensure the security of residents and staff, and failed to secure residents' belongings from theft. And so we reported previously that when the residents moved out, they were only allowed to take a few items, not very much. They were shipped on buses and just shipped out. Families didn't know where they were. One resident was missing for a while and was left kind of wandering the streets for a while. It was a big mess. And the residents left their belongings, and a lot of them were stolen, and they could never get it back. According to the report, it says residents were disoriented and crying, and emergency personnel needed to sedate at least one resident who didn't want to leave. Another resident with a diagnosed mental illness was unaccounted for until weeks later. A member of the public spotted this resident at a restaurant near the closed facility, according to police reports. So, again, this was a horrific case. They just came in, closed, same day, shipped them out. So the latest fines follow 12 federal violations since March 2021. While the facility was still open, totaling more than $140,000 and ranging from $2,200 to more than $45,000, according to a report. 2 abuse and neglect complaints were clocked by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services as well, along with 9 quality of life complaints, resulting in fines totaling $86,373, according to Medicare records. Resident advocates have said that instead of levying fines, CMS should investigate other facilities owned and or operated by the directors, which kind of makes sense. So according to Sam Brooks, who spoke with St. Louis Public Radio, he serves as director of public policy at Consumer Voice, says, I've seen $1 million fines. Even that is a cost of doing business. If they're not fit to own and operate nursing homes, they shouldn't be. That's the penalty they should be facing. So HSS, in January issued a scathing 59-page report detailing the failures of leadership immediately before and after Northview closed. About 170 residents were sent to different nursing homes in the region, and family members were oftentimes unable to track down their loved ones for days after the closure. So there's a lot that obviously that goes into that. I don't have the report, but I'm just going to say my heart goes out to those families and to those and the staff that work there, because that had been very disruptive to the staff. You had a job one day, the next day you don't. Your facility closed down. So as we are seeing more and more nursing home closures and things like that are happening, we're going to continue to report this as ongoing news. Okay, so let's follow up with this story that we talked about last week, and it was one of our last stories, and I wanted to keep an eye on it. And I told you if I found anything new out, I would let you know. So this is from Columbus, Indiana. It says Columbus nurse charged in connection to Twin Valley patient death to plead not guilty. It's from Columbus, Ohio. So ABC 6 News now knows the name of the patient who was beaten to death at a mental health hospital in July of 2022. So again, this was a couple years ago. This incident happened. Another resident attacked a resident. That resident had died from their injuries. And now not only has the resident that attacked the other resident been charged, but they also charge three other people in that who worked at the facility. And there was really not a lot of clear information as to why they were charging these people. So there's just a little bit more about that. So they also, the ABC News were able to contact the attorney representing the nurse who was charged. And he says the court will need to review the facility's standard of care. So this is a standard of care violation, and now they're being charged criminally. So it says, according to the coroner's report, the patient has been identified as 57-year-old Paul Fusick. The report said he died by a blunt force injury to the head during a physical assault. 4 people, including a nurse, have been indicted on charges that allege they beat Fusick to death. So they're saying that somehow the staff participated in this. So we're going to have to find out what's going on, because it really isn't clear all what happened. It says the incident happened inside the Twin Valley Behavioral Health Care in the Hilltop 2 years ago, and the campus is maximum security. Okay, so there's, again, more information has been coming out about this facility. Court documents claim that 24-year-old Danny Macklin attacked another patient who later died. He is now facing multiple charges, including murder. Along with Macklin, 3 employees are also facing charges: psychiatric assistants John Traylor and Augustine Norris, as well as a nurse named Julie Willoughby. All 3 have been charged with involuntary manslaughter, patient abuse, or neglect. So again, we're not sure. The full picture of this and the scope of the charges have not been released as of yet. So according to the attorney representing Willoughby, Wesley Davis, her attorney, says she plans to plead not guilty to the charges. He says this was an incident that took place quite a while ago. I believe that Miss Willoughby was following all of her training and the standards of care that were laid out when she was trained at the facility. Davis said the courts will need to review witness testimony and surveillance footage in the case. So at least there is some footage to review. He says that most of all, they will need to determine if the employees followed the facility's standard of care. And this is why I bring out some of these stories, is because as healthcare providers, as nurses, I want you to understand what that means. And standard of care is, what would a reasonable nurse, given a similar set of circumstances, under the guidance of her policy, procedure, etc., but what would a reasonable nurse do? So I'm not sure if this is a delay in care. I'm not sure what the standard that this person, this nurse, Nurse Willoughby, has supposedly breached. But again, that's because we don't have all the information. But I want to let you know that we've got a little bit more information about this story. And so, according to Attorney Davis, it says we'll be talking to the prosecutor and seeing where the state stands and exactly what the state's goal is in this, and trying to see where we move forward from there. The Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services says one employee resigned and two have since retired. Macklin is currently behind bars due to the charges. So again, not sure all what's happening, what the charges are going to be, what the standard of care breach would have been. So as we get more information, we'll certainly share that with you. But I wanted to let you know I always try to be fair and follow with the story. And if there's more information, I do like to bring that to light. So here's something that came from Health Leaders. I happened to see this story today. And it's about concerns grow over quality of care as investor groups buy not-for-profit nursing homes. So this came out just today. And so it says Shelly Olson's mother, who has dementia, has lived at Scandia Village Nursing Home in rural Sister Bay, Wisconsin for almost 5 years. At first, Olson said her mother received great care at the facility, then owned by a not-for-profit organization, the Evangelical Lutheran Good Samaritan Society. And can I say that, as an aside, as a person who's worked in long-term care, I have certainly seen some locally nonprofit-run organizations that provide excellent care, and I've seen some not so much. But this is what happened. So we're going to continue with this story. So in 2019, Sanford Health, a not-for-profit tax-exempt hospital system, acquired the nursing home. The COVID-19 pandemic struck soon after. From then on, the facility was regularly short on staff and residents endured long wait times and other care problems, said Olson, a registered nurse who formerly worked at the facility. So important to note, Olson not only had her mother at the facility, but also formerly worked there. Now, Scandia Village has a new for-profit owner, Continuum Healthcare. Olson said she was reassured when Continuum hired two locals as the facility's new administrator and nursing director. But Kathleen Wagner, a former Scandia Village nurse director, is not optimistic. She says the for-profit owner will face the same problems. Wagner, who's now retired and serves on an informal task force that monitors the facility's quality of care. No one has articulated what the for-profit owner will bring to the table to change the picture. And that's often the case because for-profit entities will purchase these facilities because they're often, tied with the hospital, etc. And so the question becomes, what will they bring to the table? What's going to change? Are they going to provide the resources so that they have adequate staffing? We don't know. And a lot of times they keep you in the dark. So this is the sale of Scandia Village this year is part of a trend of for-profit companies, including private equity groups and real estate investment trusts, snapping up struggling not-for-profit nursing homes, many of which were operated for decades by Lutheran, Catholic, Jewish, and other faith-based organizations. The pace of sales has ticked up, reaching a high last year, according to Ziegler Investment Banking. Since 2015, 900 not-for-profit nursing homes and senior living communities nationwide have changed hands, with more than half of them acquired by for-profit operators. So here's some of the things that they're seeing. That says part of the problem is that to boost profits, many for-profit operators set up a network of related companies to provide fee-based services such as management, physical therapy, and staffing. And so we've talked about this before, how Company A providing physical therapy and Company B providing management services and staffing, Company C, They are all different companies, but they're all owned by the parent company, which may also own the nursing home. So the money just kind of gets recycled out of the coffers of the larger corporation. It says they may also sell a nursing home's real estate to a sister company, which then charges high rent. These payments cut into the available operating funds to provide adequate staffing and quality care. Last year, New York Attorney General Letitia James sued the for-profit owners of 4 nursing homes for financial fraud and resident neglect. And this is exactly what we've covered in that story too. If you remember back, you can go back to our previous episodes and see that. And so she alleged that these facilities use more than $83 million in public funds to enrich themselves through a complex network of related companies while providing horrendous care. So you'll see that this is something that we've reported on before. So now there's concerns about selling this nursing home again to a for-profit entity. So Nate Shima, CEO of the Evangelical Lutheran Good Samaritan Society, said his organization decided to sell some of his long-term care facilities to Continuum Healthcare, a New Jersey-based company, and a second company, Idaho-based Casadia Healthcare, as part of its strategy to better serve its communities. They now operate in 7 Midwestern states, down from 22 states. Consolidating markets better enables his organization to launch programs for nursing home residents in conjunction with Sanford's hospital and clinics. So we will definitely follow this. There's more in this story if you want to come up with this, but we're going to go ahead and take a brief break right now, and we will be right back. Attention nurses, looking to take your nursing knowledge and turn it into a viable business? Ready to take action, but don't know where to start? Join the Nurse Shark Academy. We support nurses as business owners and leaders. We offer career and entrepreneurial coaching for nurses or other healthcare professionals. Whether you're a brand new nurse, a seasoned health professional, or building a startup, join a community of support. Entrepreneurship can be lonely, but it doesn't have to be. Our career and business coaching services are designed to help you achieve the life work balance you desire. Our experienced coaches will help you identify and attain your career and business goals, enabling you to become more successful in both your personal and professional life. I'm Tina Baxter. I founded the Nurse Shark Academy because I believe every nurse is a hero on his or her own epic journey. Nurses are launching new businesses every day. You don't have to do it alone. Join the Nurse Shark Academy and get the support, training, and coaching that you need to launch your successful nurse business. Become a member at the nursesharkacademy.biz. And we're back. All right, let's get on to our next story here. This is a story that came from OPB about Optum, and I just want to update everyone. This is about Oregon, for the state of Oregon. It says Corvallis Clinic asks Oregon to sidestep oversight and approve controversial Optum merger. The Corvallis Clinic, a primary and specialty care practice with 600 employees in the Willamette Valley, is asking the state to immediately approve its proposed merger with Optum Oregon. The Oregon Health Authority has been reviewing the proposed merger since Optum Oregon filed notice of its intention to acquire the clinic in late December 2023. The merger has been controversial. Optum Oregon is a local subsidiary of Optum, an arm of the largest for-profit healthcare company in the country, United Health Group. Ding, 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 ding. This is the same United Health Group that has been under attack with the cyber thing. Yeah, all this is related. Okay. So United, which is also a dominant player in the insurance market, has alienated some local providers with its reimbursement practices. Since 2022, a division of OHA has reviewed all mergers and acquisitions between parties that makes at least $10 million in annual revenue. On Friday, attorneys representing the Corvallis Clinic filed a request for an emergency exemption from the state's oversight process, citing a financial emergency. It says, because of the clinic's lack of stability from a cash perspective, the lawyers wrote, the clinic simply doesn't have the time to undergo continuing regulatory review without necessitating further cost-cutting measures. So moving forward with the Optum merger immediately would provide access to cash to cover rent, payroll, and expenses, allowing the clinic to keep its 600 providers and support staff employed. So these are some questions that, obviously are coming up. And as you're seeing Optum getting bigger and bigger, people are asking questions. But the Corvallis Clinic and Optum redacted a more detailed description of the immediate financial emergency from the filings, claiming the details of the situation are trade secrets exempt from public disclosure. If Corvallis Clinic is facing an immediate cash flow emergency, one possibility is that it's been triggered by the recent cyber attack on Change Healthcare, yet another subsidiary of United Health and Optum. So again, we're seeing more fallout from that cyber attack, which is why I'm continuing to report this information to you. And so there's a lot of issues with trying to collect reimbursement, paying for claims, and all of this thing. Change Healthcare processes about 15 billion healthcare transactions annually, according to federal officials. Parts of the claim processing system remain down, with United Health estimating it will be working again on March 18th. Well, that will in 5 short days, but we'll see. 5 short but long days for people who are trying to get paid, because if you're not bringing in the money, how are you going to make your payroll? How are you going to pay your bills? So these are some things that are happening that we need to be aware of, and how can we put protections in place that something like this does not happen again, maybe a redundancy system or something of that nature. But there are concerns about this happening in Oregon. So if you're in Oregon and you have any thoughts on this, let us know. Share it in the comments. We'd like to hear what you have to say about this. So let's go on over to Iowa. This is again coming from the news in Iowa. And it says, debate over capping temporary nurse rates for Iowa nursing homes. Yeah. So it says agencies that provide temporary staff for Iowa long-term care facilities are calling on lawmakers to table a plan to limit how much they charge. A bill that's cleared the Iowa House would cap charges for so-called traveling nurses at 150% of the statewide average wage for nurses who work in nursing homes. Well, okay, so first of all, I have a problem with this. This is a personal thing, but because I've been covering this story, nursing home wages for nurses in Iowa is not that great. So capping them at 150% makes me wonder, and you remember that the staffing agency have to take their cut, right? So that's going to decrease what they're going to be willing to pay the nurse that's actually in that facility. And that's a concern, because the pay isn't that great anyway. How do you know you'll be able to get quality nurses if you're cutting their incentive to go there, when they're already, you wouldn't need them if you weren't short staffed, right? And so the nurses know they're already going into a situation where there's short staffing, and there's issues because otherwise you wouldn't call them in, and yet you're not compensating them for stepping into that place. And you have to realize that nurses that are working for these travel agencies have to pay their own taxes. They're often contract employees. They don't get benefits like paid time off. They don't get vacation time. They don't get health benefits, so they have to get their own health benefits. So these are things that a lot of these lawmakers may not understand, that you, when you're doing that travel, you're giving up those perks that we usually see in everyday, W-2 employee stuff, right? And so there's a reason why you can command that type of money, because you're stepping into a situation that's not ideal. You're expected to, with very little training, to hit the ground running. And you don't have that backup. So that means if you don't work, you don't get paid. So there's no guaranteed a paycheck unless you work. There's no money, set aside for you to take a vacation or any of those types of things when you're working as a traveler. So those are some of the things you have to offset. And oftentimes you're paying for bills back home, but yet you're also staying in another city or away from home, and you have to pay those bills too. Living expenses. There's all these things that can happen with this. So I want us to really think about this before we say, oh yeah, that they should be making that much money. Think about what you're actually saying. Okay. All right. So it says the bill that's clear at the Iowa House would cap charges for so-called traveling nurses at 150% of the statewide average wage for nurses working in nursing homes. Bob Levenius is on the board of directors for Grape Tree Medical Staffing Agency in Milford. He says temp agencies will stop doing business with Iowa nursing homes if there's a cap on what they can charge, just like what's happened in the only 2 states that currently cap pay for traveling nurses working in nursing homes. So they're saying, yeah, we're not coming. We're not coming. Then what are you going to do? Others warn the move would lead to staffing shortages in nursing homes or exacerbate the ones that are already there, because they weren't there, they wouldn't need travelers. Greg Opseth is the chief operating officer for Highland Medical Staffing in Gowrie. And then a lobbyist for the Iowa Nurses Association says nurses feel singled out since there are other traveling medical professionals like doctors who aren't included in the proposed pay limitation. And that's the other thing. That's the other thing that I have a problem with. Why are you capping the nurses? How about some of these extravagant, as you say, physician travelers or locum tenens? Let's think about that. Those contracts are often very lucrative. So my question is, why are you singling out nurses? And this is what I meant in my recent blog post about someone mentioned the war on nurses. Because I'm seeing that, while we still are the most trusted profession and while they still hold us up as angels and all that BS, right? Now they're also coming and say, well, we love you, but you don't deserve to get paid. We love you, but we don't need to protect you in the workplace. We love you, but you don't need extra help, right? Because you should be able to do it all, because you're angels now, so you should be able to do it all. Oh, and when you make a mistake or something happens because you're short staffed and you work in 2 places at the same time, we're going to come after you criminally. So this is what I'm seeing. And so I think a lot of what's happening is often short-sighted and not well thought out. But let's go on. So a lobbyist for the Iowa Nurses Association says nurses feel singled out since there are other traveling medical professionals like doctors who aren't included in the proposed pay limitation. Brent Willett, president and CEO of the Iowa Healthcare Association, says that if a cap were implemented on traveling nurses, Iowa long-term care facilities would be able to redirect an estimated $22 million on full-time staff. That's not where that money is going to go. We already know that. Because if it was going to do that, you would be paying your full-time staff that money and wouldn't need the travelers. We all know where the money is going to go. We've just covered that in the story previously. So Senator Jason Schultz, a Republican from Schleswig, says some temp agencies appear to be pocketing a lot of money. And while that's capitalism, a lot of taxpayer dollars are being spent on nursing home care through Medicaid program. And he's not ruling out some sort of limits on what temp agencies can charge. So a Senate committee will review the proposal later this week. So if you are in Iowa and you're a nurse, it's time for you to talk to your state legislators about this. Okay, this is another article I wanted to go over real quick, and this is an issue with nurse practitioners, and we've had this conversation about the nurse practitioners in California. This is a while ago who were suing to be allowed to call herself doctor. Well, I'm bringing this out because this case is similar to that, but a little bit different because of some of the things that were I talked about in this case. So I'm just going to let you know what it is, and I want to say this because I want nurses and nurse practitioners to know what you can do legally and what you cannot do legally. This is important. Let's get into it. District Attorney Dan Dow announced a settlement with medical doctor for the unlawful supervision of the nurse practitioner who called herself Dr. Sarah. Dr. Anika Moore agreed to pay $25,000 in penalties related to allegations of unlawful supervision of nurse practitioner Sarah Ernie. Ms. Ernie opened an independent medical office in Aurora Grande and prescribed hundreds of controlled substance medications without Dr. Moore's knowledge over 2 years. District Attorney Dan Dow announced that the District Attorney's Office Special Prosecution Unit has settled with Dr. Anika Moore. The settlement was related to an earlier settlement action by the District Attorney's Office with nurse practitioner Sarah Ernie, who identified herself to patients as Dr. Sarah, despite not being a physician. And so there is a link to a previous press release for that, but you can certainly look at that. But I want you to look at this because this is particular with California law. So if you're in California and you're a nurse or nurse practitioner, listen well, but also for the rest of us across the country, something for us to look at. So California law requires supervising physicians and the nurses they supervise to enter into a written collaboration agreement that defines their specific roles and duties in treating patients. Now, this is where it's important because my question is, one, is this a collaborative practice agreement as like in Indiana where they don't actually have to be in the same place, they don't actually have to see your patients, etc., where it's collaboration, not supervision? There's a difference. Or does California law require supervision? Because that's different. So this is where you have to know your Nurse Practice Act. And I'm certainly going to ask a nurse attorney friend in California who may know this. Okay. So the agreement is to specify whether medications can be prescribed and must list each medication that is classified as a controlled substance, which is not really required by Indiana, to say each medication, right? The supervising physician is required to routinely evaluate the standardized procedures and to evaluate the nurse's performance. So this is where the key and what's critical. Okay. So during the investigation, Dr. Moore stated that she agreed to become Ms. Ernie's supervising physician in 2018. At the time, Dr. Moore lived in Massachusetts, practicing obstetrics and gynecology. Dr. Moore received the collaboration agreement from Ms. Ernie, but only skimmed the contents and returned it to Ms. Ernie. Over the next 2 years, Dr. Moore stated that she would make herself available to answer Ms. Ernie's questions. Dr. Moore was not paid for these services. Dr. Moore stated that she was led to believe that Ms. Ernie was working in a clinical setting with other physicians. As a result, she was not aware that Ms. Ernie had opened an independent medical office and did not collaborate with Ms. Ernie on the standardized procedures or evaluate Ms. Ernie's performance. Finally, Dr. Moore was unaware that Ms. Ernie was prescribing controlled substances such as testosterone, a Schedule III substance, to both female and male patients. So I'm not exactly sure why she was prescribing that. There's no indication as to why or what type of clinic it was. Because I haven't read the story in a while, so I can't really tell you. Um, but this is what it goes on to say. It says Assistant District Attorney Eric Dobroff, as a supervising physician, Dr. Moore accepted a professional commitment to collaborate and supervise nurse practitioner Ernie. Our office seeks to ensure that every physician that consents to supervise a nurse will comply with California requirements and take great care to routinely evaluate whether the terms of the agreement are being met and to evaluate the nurse's performance to ensure best patient care. While Dr. Moore does not admit liability, the stipulated civil judgment requires Dr. Moore to pay civil penalties totaling $25,000 and to follow California law and regulations when entering into any future supervisory relationships with a California registered nurse. So I bring that out because this is where knowing your Nurse Practice Act for your state is so important. So much so that I was just in talks with a couple of nurses today, and we're going to be putting together a special event on LinkedIn to talk about those issues and things that come up, because this is, again, unfortunate. Unfortunate. So, in other news, and again, this happens to be another nursing home related news. It says historically black nursing home facing closure. The pending closure of historic Mission Hill Nursing Home, established to serve the black community, will displace more than 70 residents this summer. That move, which its leadership attributed to money troubles, come as the facility faces allegations of financial mismanagement. An intent to close the Edgar P. Benjamin Healthcare Center was filed last month with the State Department of Public Health and announced to staff a day later. If approved, the almost 100-year-old nursing home in Mission Hill was shut down July 1st. The center, which serves largely residents of color, currently has 76 residents. Staff, residents, and other advocates have expressed concerns that the loss of the Edgar Benjamin, which was founded in 1927 as Rest Haven Nursing Home, would be a major blow to a community organization with a lasting legacy. The Benjamin has been there, says Leslie Henderson, Director of Admissions and a nurse who has worked at the facility for 24 years. It has been a beacon of hope in the community for 100 years. Kathy Blicker, who has worked at the center in accounts receivable for 9 years, said the closure announcement from Tony Francis, president and CEO of the center, came suddenly for staff. She says, "You didn't even give us a chance to try and save it," said Blicker, whose mother used to live in the facility. "It's like we're opening today and closing tomorrow." That abrupt news has left the center in chaos. Every day the residents are like, "Do we have to leave today?" They're afraid this is their home. Many nearby facilities don't have any openings as residents of the Edgar Benjamin seek to transfer. In an email to the Banner, he has said that the economic climate for long-term care facilities like the Edgar Benjamin is dismal, making continued operation unsustainable. This claim raises concerns for staff and officials. Between 2015 and 2021, Francis's salary increased 4 times, from about $156,200 to nearly $628,600, according to financial records filed with the IRS. According to reporting from Boston 25 TV station, his total compensation, including pension, insurance, and payroll taxes, is over $900,000. According to minutes from the center board meeting, Francis started taking loans out of his personal account to fund payroll for staff. In January of last year, he requested 12% interest when taking money out of his account for payroll. As of the end of September, he had used approximately $150,000 in supporting payroll. Advocates point to other troubling financial incidents in recent years. At the end of 2023, staff at the center went weeks without receiving paychecks, according to Boston 25, which broke the story. The center also lost $100,000 in a cryptocurrency exchange, according to the minutes for the nursing home's April 27, 2023 board meeting obtained by the Banner. According to those minutes, the center tried to get the money back, but would have had to pay an additional $20,000. In the same meeting, Francis asked for an annual 5% raise, and a bonus of $70,000. Okay, let's go back to my proposal to having CEO bonuses and raises tied to staff retention, outcome measures, and things like that. Well, I don't know anything about these people. I'm reading this the first time too, so I often read these stories and react to them in real time with you. um, but this was interesting. Okay, I had to stop and think on this one for a minute. Minutes from the board's meeting across the past year document the financial challenges of paying for insurance, worker compensation, pharmacy, dietary, linens, and union dues, in addition to a union settlement. In October, according to the meeting's minutes, the center was behind on payments as all of its income was going toward payroll. According to the Edgar Benjamin's financial records for 2014 and 2021, the center's revenue averaged $12.65 million annually. Blicker, who interacts with much of the center's income through her role working with accounts receivable, said money has been coming into the center regularly. Though she says she doesn't have access to information about the center's expenditures based on its income, she was surprised it would have to shut down for financial reasons. Delroy McDonald, who formerly worked as a bookkeeper for the Edgar Benjamin for 9 years, said he was on the committee that selected Francis to take over as president and CEO. At the time, McDonald said Francis looked good on paper, but now he blames Francis for the situation the facility is in. Many of the concerns of residents and staff are expected to be brought up at the March 12th hearing with the State Department of Public Health, which occurred after the banner's press deadline. The Department of Public Health runs hearings for the closures of centers like the Edgar Benjamin and can offer feedback on the closure plan proposed by the center's leadership. So we're going to have to see what's happening. We'll continue to follow this story. There's more to this article if you want to read it. But this is a shame. And then this makes me wonder if maybe they could put the facility, it's a historic facility, maybe put it in receivership. And for those of you that are watching the show and may have comments, because I know there are people who will, one of the reasons why this facility is important is because historically there was segregation. Let's not forget that. And so to have a piece of history go away like this, it to me is tragic. And it sounds like it was very well supported in the local community. So I know that this is a blow for the local community. Okay, here's another quick story from McKnight's Long-Term Care News. And I'm bringing this out because we had previously reported on some of the things that were happening. So I wanted to make sure that since there's further developments, I talk about it again. So it says, judge finds evidence is worthless in massive false claim suit alleging worthless nursing home services. So let's talk about it. A federal judge this week tossed a nearly decade-old false claims that targeted what was once the nation's largest nursing home chain, writing that the lawsuit was grossly short on evidence. Providers may portray the case as a prime example of how individuals could try to abuse the legal system against caregivers. Well, it could be. We'll see. So Philip Hunter, a registered nurse who worked at Golden Living Center in Alabama for just over 2 months, brought a case 9 years after his employment ended. He alleged the chain and 10 related owners engaged in a scheme to routinely overbill Medicare and Medicaid over a years-long period at 273 nursing homes, but is charged that the owners billed the government for worthless services was ultimately undermined by his own statements that employees worked extra hours or filled additional roles to deliver needed care. The suit was filed in 2015, but it was only last year that the federal government and several states connected to the false claims investigation declined to intervene on Hunter's behalf. Hunter's suit targets Fillmore Capital, the private equity firm that bought Golden Living in 2006, as well as GGNSC Holdings, GGNSC Administrative Services, Beverly Enterprises, and other companies, once affiliated with Golden Living. Hunter had argued that the owner, quote, made intensive efforts to fill beds with high acuity residents and increase the reimbursement while simultaneously imposing staffing targets that limited the number of medical personnel available based on the number of patients rather than their needs. Citing his own experts, he told court it was, quote, physically impossible for staff to appropriately treat their patients given the number of employees they had, but the defendants still billed Medicare and Medicaid based on falsified RUG scores, NBS assessments, and medical records. But in his ruling, Chad F. Kinney, U.S. District Court Judge for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, spent pages outlining a sheer lack of preliminary evidence to support those claims or proof of a scheme involved any specific employees. And so that's where the case fell apart. The judge noted that Hunter didn't name any individuals who submitted false claims, identify specific facilities that submitted false claims, or provide examples of care that was not performed but documented. Hunter, quote, offers only an overview of the scheme with no accompanying factual explanation of how or whether any false claims were actually submitted. Hunter, however, did not argue that all the claims were false and instead conceded that some care was provided. Without any details on which claims were fraudulent, then, Kinney wrote, there would be no parameters for the defendants to understand which claims they should investigate, nor would they have the adequate notice to intelligently respond. Fillmore Capital, a private equity firm, sold off most of its Golden Living holdings in the mid-2010s. The chain now operates only in Indiana and changed its name to Brickyard in early 2022. So here's the crux of this. So it says the strongest worded portions of Kinney's ruling struck at the role of the False Claims Act and those who had misinterpreted it. He reiterated that a lack of adequate care does not equate to a worthless service claim. The FCA is not a vehicle for punishing garden variety breaches of contract or regulatory violations. To state a worthless services claim, the performance of the service must be so deficient that for all practical purposes, it is the equivalent of no performance at all. A diminished value of services theory does not satisfy this standard. Services that are worthless are not worthless, or worthless, are not worthless. And so for making false claim certifications about meeting staffing requirements, Kinney noted that Hunter's argument also fell short, given that the only current standard is boilerplate language that skilled nursing facilities and nursing facilities must be in compliance with federal and state requirements. Kinney did not argue that the employees were told to falsify paperwork as part of the scheme, only that they did so because they found the demands of their job to be difficult. So the judge stated that overwork alone does not equate to false claims being submitted, and the allegation of submission of vague and unidentified false claims does not equate to implementing a scheme to submit false claims. So we're going to see what happens further in these types of cases, but that was a very important ruling in long-term care. So I wanted to share that with you all. Okay, let's move on to our next story. Yes, we do need to talk about this one. And I'm kind of glad to have this. So, San Diego nurse acquitted over involuntary manslaughter over inmate death. This is from CBS8.com. A nurse was acquitted of involuntary manslaughter Friday for the death of an inmate at a San Diego County women's jail, but jurors were unable to reach a verdict against a doctor also facing manslaughter charges in connection with the woman's death. Following just over 2 days of deliberations, uh, Denali Pascua, 39, was found not guilty by an El Canyon jury of causing the November 11, 2019 death of Elisa Serna at the Las Colinas detention facility in Santee. Okay. Jurors also voted 9-3 in favor of acquitting Friedrich von Lichting, 59, the physician on duty the day Serna died. Van Lichting will be back in court Wednesday for a hearing to determine whether prosecutors will retry the case against her. Serna, 24, died shortly after she collapsed in her cell in the jail's medical observation unit. Prosecutors argued that Pascua left Serna on the floor of her cell for about an hour before summoning emergency medical personnel. They also allege von Lichting provided substandard care for Serna, who they said was exhibiting obvious symptoms of drug and alcohol withdrawal, including frequent vomiting and seizures. While her withdrawal symptoms were severe, Serna's condition could have been treated, prosecutors argued, yet she was often ignored or accused of faking her symptoms. Serna died from what a county medical examiner determined were complications of chronic polysubstance abuse with a contributing factor of an early intrauterine pregnancy. Defense attorneys for both von Lichting and Pascua argued that their clients were being scrutinized with the benefit of hindsight. Von Lichting's attorney, Dana Grimes, told jurors that her client was working with an incomplete picture of Serna's condition while treating her. Grimes said November 11th was the first day von Lichting treated Serna and that she never witnessed any of Serna's seizure symptoms or instances of vomiting. Pascua's attorney, Alicia Fries, said the nurse was following standard nursing protocol and that according to testimony from medical experts, Serna's position lying on the floor and against the wall did not play a role in her death. In the early afternoon of November 11th, von Lichting and others responded to Serna's cell after she'd been exhibiting seizure-like symptoms while in a wheelchair. Deputy District Attorney John Dunlap alleged that while examining Serna, von Lichting did next to nothing in terms of treating her other than order that Serna to remain under observation in the medical observation unit rather than go back to the jail's general population. Hours later, Serna suffered another seizure that led nurses to call von Lichting's assistance. But the doctor never responded to Serna's cell and instead left the jail for the day as her shift came to a close. A few hours later, Pascua's shift started, and while attempting to take Serna's vital signs in her cell, Serna collapsed, struck her head against the wall, and began experiencing yet another seizure. So here's a case. This nurse comes in on her shift, second shift, to take care of this patient. She just met her. She's taking vital signs. Hey, she had another seizure. Dunlap alleged Pascua didn't finish taking Serna's vital signs after her collapse. Okay. Instead, he said she left the cell and sat at a nurse's station situated a few feet away for the next hour, during which Serna lay on the floor with her head slumped forward and propped up against the wall and urinated herself. Pascua later noted that Serna was pale and didn't appear to be breathing, at which point emergency medical personnel was summoned. She was pronounced dead shortly thereafter. While von Lichting and Pascua were the only people charged among the medical professionals and the sheriff's deputies who encountered Serna in their final days, Dunlap acknowledged that jurors may feel that others might be responsible or that there were many failures among those entrusted with Serna's care. No one deserves any awards for their conduct in this case, Dunlap says. The case represents a rare instance of criminal charges brought against medical providers in connection with an inmate's death. So apparently there's been a high rate of deaths at the San Diego County jails, which has drawn criticisms and scrutiny from the public and officials. And with the California State Auditor publishing a scathing report in 2022 that stated that the San Diego County Sheriff's Department policies and practices regarding inmate care were deficient. So again, I'm not sure why she didn't finish taking her vital signs, and I'm not sure why she didn't immediately call for help when it was noticed she struck her head. But I'm not sure what all she did, and I don't have all the access to the case documents. But she was acquitted. And so I wanted to bring you the update on that case as well. All right, we're going to go to our next story, and then we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get ready to wrap up. And it says, why male nurses earn $250 more per week than female nurses. And this was on Money Watch in the Morning Star, or excuse me, Market Watch in the Morning Star. It says equal pay day research finds women earn less than men, even in female dominated fields like nursing, teaching, and HR. Women in the United States continue to earn less than their male counterparts in 2023, and that's simply because they're disproportionately work in lower paying professions. They earn less than men in every occupation, including those dominated by women. Women's weekly earnings in 2023 were lower than men's in all 20 of the most common occupations for full-time female workers, including teaching, nursing, financial management, and administrative assistants, according to a new report by the Institute of Women's Policy Research, a think tank focused on women's economic issues. So even in nursing, even though it's a female-dominated field, women still make less than men. So, according to Deborah Vagans, who's the National Campaign Director, Equal Rights Advocates, a nonprofit focused on women's rights, says where women work, it is undervalued and underpaid almost no matter where they work. Over time, women retire with 44% less saved on average than men, and their relatively lower lifetime earnings also translate to lower Social Security benefits. And I've certainly seen that. I find it quite interesting. Now, my mom did work in public relations, and stopped working before my dad stopped working. But my dad worked for General Motors, and his income when they retired was higher, so his Social Security was higher. So when dad died, mom would get his Social Security, not hers, because it was higher. And I often think that, you know what, as you were a family unit, I just kind of think that your family should get the rest of your Social Security money that you paid in. I just don't think it's right that the government gets to keep it. I don't know, there's something about that doesn't sit right with me. But anyway, it's because he made more than she did. And I'm not saying, they were in different fields. So that may have been part of it, and he worked longer. That may also be part of it. But as women, we need to think about those things when it comes time to looking at our retirement. And are we doing something to kind of make up that gap as much as we can? The United States has a wider gender gap than nearly all EU countries, as well as the UK, Costa Rica, Colombia, Argentina, Chile, and Brazil, according to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. As adults, American women are more likely to live in poverty than American men at every age. Among full-time employees, the average gender gap last year was 16.4%, a median difference of nearly $200 per week. So let's take a look at this pay gap here, because I wanted to talk about this. This is talking about teachers. I want to get to, and I'm all for teachers, don't get me wrong, but I want to get to the good stuff. It says pay disparity in higher education as well. At Vassar, a co-ed institution originally established as a women's college, a group of female professors are seeking back pay and damages in a lawsuit alleging they have been bringing pay disparities to administrators' attention since 2008. The college told the New York Times it would hire a firm to analyze salaries, and in a letter published in the student newspaper, the faculty members who brought this lawsuit have a different understanding of the relevant facts and law that is an issue in the dispute. Of course, they say that. I was just looking. School districts are about the same. It says teaching. Yeah, so I just was curious. Here it is. This is what I was looking for. It says in most common full-time occupation for women, elementary and middle school teachers, there's a 10.9% earnings gap between women and men, which is about $150 per week. The second most common occupation for women, registered nurse, had a 15% wage difference, or nearly $250 per week. So that is something that you need to look at as nurses, and why is that continuing to happen? And again, I think part of that is that nurses historically have just kind of sat back and taken it. But now we're seeing more nurses are speaking out about what's going on in the workplace and disparity. So I appreciate that. Just a quick update, and then we're going to take a quick break and come back because we're running over our time, but that's all right. Nurses strike at Honolulu Hospital continues amid contract talks. So again, the nurses at Honolulu are still striking. A medical worker strike at the hospital in Honolulu stretches to March, months since employees and management began talks for new contracts with no resolution. Some nurses at the Kapiloni Medical Center have been working without a contract since December after the said negotiations got underway in September. Both parties have now agreed to bring a federal mediator to try and negotiate a settlement. Tensions between the two parties heightened when the nurses went on a week-long strike in January. Roughly 600 unionized workers went on protest, pushing for a minimum patient to staff ratio and no mandatory overtime. Nurses also shared their concerns about being overworked due to staffing shortages. They urged the hospital to hire more personnel, especially to look out for critically ill infant patients. So again, we'll see what happens. We'll keep monitoring this. There is a bill. The Hawaii Nurses Association testified this month to the legislature on a proposed changes for work standards with a push for mandated patient ratios. Bill SB 1580 would address exactly that, along with requiring hospitals to create staffing committees and staffing plans, as well as establishing breaks and overtime provisions for healthcare workers. So we'll see what happens in that case. And we're going to go ahead and take another brief break, and then we'll get right back into our last story and wrap up. Nurses, are you burnt out, frustrated, looking for something new? Are you looking for more? Nurses, are you ready to feel the sun? You will dream big and expand your consciousness as an entrepreneur. Your nursing license is your key to freedom. Join the Nurse Shark Academy at the nursesharkacademy.biz today. All right, and let's get up with our last story of the day. There was a lot in the news today, so I just wanted to cut to the things that are the most important as we're going over our segment, but I wanted to talk about our Nurses Making a Difference. And this is Black Nurse Scientists Mentoring Program Tours, North Carolina, AT&T to inspire advanced nursing careers. So I wanted to put a shout out to North Carolina Agricultural Technical State University, which put out this press release, and I wanted to share this these nurses. So, and approximately 150 students pursuing nursing at North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University participated in the inaugural Black Nurse Scientist Mentoring Program, Historically Black Colleges and Universities Tour at Union Square in downtown Greensboro. The tour kickoff featured activities for students and presentations from 4 Black nurse scientists, highlighting their expertise and the need for more diverse students to pursue doctorates in the field so they can become leaders in addressing health inequities in their communities. First of all, I want to say that again. 4 Black nurse scientists. There is a big push that's happening in nursing right now, that those of you who may not be aware of it, but nursing has not been considered a STEM profession. And now there's a push to include nursing as a STEM profession because, yes, there's science behind nursing. There's science behind what we do. And I think that's important. So let's get more into this. So Skinita Randolph, PhD, associate professor at Duke, and former NCAT faculty member, is one of the 4 Betty Irene Moore Fellowship for Nurse Leaders and Innovators inaugural cohort members: Camila Alexander, Johns Hopkins, Dawn Aycock from Georgia State School of Nursing, and Fawn A. Cothran, National Alliance for Caregiving joined her on the tour after they secured funding from the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation. Students participated in one of 3 escape rooms, highlighting scenarios related to the presenter's research expertise in intimate partner violence, stroke prevention, and dementia family caregiving research, respectively. They go on to say, as we think about addressing health disparities and outcomes, we know that the workforce for nursing needs to reflect that of the population, said Randolph, an A&T alumna and founding director of the Addressing Health Disparities Through Equity, Engagement, Advocacy, and Trust, or HEAT lab. When we recognize that infant mortality, HIV, and cardiovascular disease are among communities of color, are high among communities of color, we must consider how we are preparing students to meet those needs, she said. When we think about leaders and addressing inequities, we have to be at the table. Randolph, whose research included addressing sexual health inequities Black male adolescents and women experience, described the nursing landscape to audience members. She underscored that most HBCUs are located in the South, and only 3 of them, Hampton University, Southern University, A&M, and Morgan State University, have PhD programs related to nursing. So please read this article. And actually, there is also a YouTube video that you can watch as well. We are running out of time. So I just want to congratulate those nurse scientists for being a nurse making a difference. And I love to see us take more action out into the community and encourage more nurses to come into the field. So I appreciate all of you for all your hard work. And kudos to you, and great on the future nurses that are coming in. All right, so that is our show for today. So I wanted to really quickly get into a couple of announcements real quick and really brief. So we have coming up, let's see, today we've had TV training and things like that, but we have coming up for the rest of the month, our next show, the Nurse Shark Academy show, our next podcast will be coming out this coming Monday. Also, we have a renewal course for CPR. If you need your CPR renewed, this is a great time to sign up for that course, and that will be on the 27th. So if you need to sign up for CPR, head over to the NurseSharkAcademy.biz. Head over to Baxter Professional Services HealthEducation.com to sign up for CPR, and we have that coming up as well. There'll be also a couple of great things. Just another reminder, on Good Friday, which is Friday, March the 29th, we will not be open as we are celebrating Holy Week and Good Friday. So we will not be open on Good Friday on the 29th. But I wish everybody a happy International Women's Month. And also thank you for all you've done and for sharing our content and subscribing. And just let me know if there's something that you want to put out into the community. I want to be able to highlight that and spotlight that as well. So those are all of my announcements. I believe I did have a community announcement, but I seem to have misplaced it. So I think there's still time for that. So I will get back with you when I can find that community announcement. I had it printed off and seem to have misplaced it. But if you have any community announcements, things that are coming up in the community, let me know. I'll be happy to spotlight them on the show. And again, share this with others. Bye-bye for now.